Hello and welcome. Today we're not really here to tell a story in the usual sense. Instead, let's think of this as a remembrance, tracing the sacred origins of a deity beloved by millions, all the way back to a time before temples and before scripture. So, where does a god's story begin? It's a question we don't really think about much, do we? We usually imagine some grand, epic beginning. But what if the real origin is much quieter, much older, and deeply rooted in the earth itself?
Well, for Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, it doesn't start in a palace. You have to kind of wipe that image from your mind completely.
Now, it begins here, right in the heart of the forest, with its deep, ancient quiet, among the tribal communities who really lived as one with nature.
And it starts with a presence, a really mysterious and deeply revered divinity known as Neel Madhav. This is the seed, the very origin from which the huge, sprawling consciousness of Jagannath eventually grows.
Okay, so to really get to the heart of Jagannath, we've got to go way back. Back to a time before any temples or scriptures. We're going to explore the true nature of Neel Madhav, this divine presence that was there long before it was ever given a name by formal religion. Just try to picture this for a second, a divinity that isn't locked away in a temple, but is just woven into the forest itself. That was Neel Madhav. Worshipped by the Sabara tribes, he wasn't separate from their world, he was their world. He was in the rustle of the leaves, the life of the jungle, a kind of radiant blue light that you felt more than you saw. This was a wisdom, way older than any book, a living, breathing part of their everyday lives.
And that's really the core of it all, isn't it? Not confined to an idol, but felt. It was all about this intimate, personal connection, a feeling that was just part of everything.
So the big question is, how did this divinity, hidden away in the forest, make its way into the wider world? Well, it all starts with a king's search for truth and a moment when two very, very different worlds were about to meet. You had these two worlds on a collision course. On one hand, you have the forest, primal, formless, all about humility and nature. And on the other, you've got the kingdom of King Indradyumna, which is all about scripture, authority, and structure. Totally different in pretty much every way. So, word of this incredible forest divinity, these whispers, they finally reached King Indradyumna. And this was a king who was really searching for something deeper. So he sends his most trusted scholar, a man named Vidyapati, on this incredibly dangerous mission into the unknown. But here's the thing, this wasn't a quest you could win with power. Neel Madhav would only reveal himself to a heart full of humility. And so it was only through patience and a total surrender of his ego that Vidyapati finally got to witness the sacred presence he was looking for. But, when these two worlds met, it wasn't going to be a simple, easy union. What happened instead was something profound, a sacred disappearance, an act of pure transformation.
Now, Vidyapati, he might have come with humility, but let's not forget, he was still representing the king. And as that whole structure of royal authority, with its need to own and define things, got closer to this formless divinity, well, something had to give. He was gone, just vanished. That radiant blue presence just faded back into the very fabric of everything, leaving the physical world.
But see, this wasn't an ending, not at all. It was a massive transformation. The idea is that for the divine to be shared with everyone, to be accessible to the whole world, it had to change. It had to change its form, its appearance, its very character. This disappearance, it was the necessary first step for a brand new beginning.
So, in that sacred space that was left behind, two great philosophies, the one from the forest and the one from the kingdom, they could finally come together. And this merger would give birth to a totally new way of understanding the divine.
And that's when the metamorphosis really kicked off. The formless divinity of the forest pulled back, making room for a new form, one that everyone could see and worship. And in that sacred process, the ancient, earthy wisdom of the tribes blended with the structured philosophy of the Vedas. It was right there, in that union, that the foundation for Lord Jagannath, as we know him, was laid.
And this is what it all comes down to. This is why Jagannath is called the Lord of the universe. He belongs to every single one of us, from the most learned scholar to the humblest person. Because his roots, his true origins, they aren't in power or royalty. They're in the simple, deep soil of humanity and nature itself.
But the disappearance of Neel Madhav, that was really just the start of the story. In our next explainer, we're going to dive into the incredible vision that was given to King Indradyumna and the sacred events that led to the carving and the birth of Jagannath's iconic form. Thank you for joining us in this